This is RTV 6 News at 5:30, working for you.
Now at 5:30, will a downtown street closure designed to increase business during the pandemic be a permanent move? What do city council member and Mass Ave business owners have to say about this idea? And there's no other city in the U.S. with more roundabouts than Carmel, and it appears the city wants to keep it that way. The next locations where circles will replace stop signs. Dan.
Here's a look at our lineup. Businesses are still struggling, but billions of dollars in loans aren't getting filled. We're looking into why. And older workers are being forced into early retirement because of the pandemic. How to protect your financial future. Also this.
I had felt so terribly alone. At one point, they said, get a rope. You know, I was walking. Let's lynch her.
This member of the Little Rock Nine shares her message for moving forward.
First at 5:30, areas of Mass Ave have been closed to traffic for just over a month now. The city put the street closure in place there and in other areas of the city to help restaurants expand their outdoor seating to increase business during the pandemic reopening plan. Now, city leaders tell us they've received positive feedback about the pedestrian-friendly setup. So we wanted to know, is the Mass Ave street closure something that could be permanent? RTV 6's Alyssa Donovan went looking for answers.
The closure has been great for some business owners, specifically restaurant owners, who have been able to spread their seating out into the streets. But for others, it's actually added to the struggle that started with the pandemic.
Initially, there was quite a bit of an uproar.
But city leaders say that's changed.
The vast majority of communications that I've gotten has been positive, overwhelmingly positive. In fact, many people say, can we just leave it this way?
It was a game changer.
Tracy Robertson has owned Mass Ave Pub for almost 20 years.
This has been one of our biggest challenges as a small business owner.
Prior to the street closure, the pub was just offering carryout. Since adding the outdoor seating, Robertson says sales have tripled.
We're not where we were pre-COVID. We're still doing much better than before.
But she knows eliminating traffic and parking has not been as positive for some of her neighbors on the avenue. The shelves of Amy Minnick Peterson's store, Decorate, have stayed pretty well stocked during the street closure.
It's been a little bit difficult for our customers because we do sell bigger items. And so when people come in, they don't exactly want to walk a huge distance to carry out a carpet, a rug, a lamp.
Peterson depends on the parking spots outside of her shop to load in home decor pieces for her clients, like tables, mirrors, chairs. The closure of the avenue to traffic has also made it more of a hassle for her customers to come to the store at all.
As much as we think it's been great for the time period that we're in, we also are looking forward to having our parking back.
Concerns for business owners like Peterson are why city leaders and other owners along Mass Ave feel it's too soon to say if the street closure is something that could stick around.
Possibility has been floated around to doing this full time. It's been floated that we do it just during the summer. It's been floated that we do it just on weekends. When we're not faced with a global pandemic, we'll be able to have very long, engaged conversations with not just city people, but with community people, with merchants.
I think that it's worth talking about.
But for now, conversations about keeping Mass Ave a pedestrian thoroughfare are going to remain just that, conversations. I'm Alyssa Donovan, RTV 6.
And the current street closures on Mass Ave and Broad Ripple Avenue that allow for outdoor seating will be in place at least through this weekend, according to Mayor Hogsett. A live look outside on what is another hot day, Kevin.
And steamy, got to add in steamy.
Yes,
that
steamy.
humidity, it has our attention and it will be with us through the weekend. It will back off a little bit, but it'll still be humid. We're at the top of the scale this evening. That's providing some heavy rainfall. A new flood advisory just issued portions of Hamilton County and Madison, where we've had 1 to 2 inches of rain from this little complex of storms. Most of us saying what storms? You can look at a distance and see these towers that build vertically into these thunderstorms producing heavy rain. Tipped into Elwood, then southeast through LaPel, just about ready to clear Anderson down to Marklettville, Pendleton, along I-69 in the southern portion of the county. Again, may see some hail with this and street flooding as well. There's the hail now between Elwood and LaPel. As far as our Dew point temperatures, when it gets in the mid-60s, you'd say it's humid. When it's in the low 70s, it feels more like we're along the Gulf Coast of the U.S. Temperatures all in the 80s, with the exception of where it's raining. If it's raining, it is cooler. Tomorrow, some thunderstorms redevelop in the afternoon. We'll hit 87 for a high.
A lot of ground covered today on coronavirus by the top health officials. Topics like schools, surges in cases, travel, and testing, including who is paying for it and masks. Testifying before a Senate committee about opening schools in the fall, Dr. Anthony Fauci said it was very important to get children back to school because of unintended negative consequences.
There are things that can creatively be done about modifying things like the school schedule, alternate days, morning versus evening, allowing under certain circumstances online virtual lessons.
The American Academy of Pediatrics also just made a strong statement calling for in-person school in the fall, citing educational, social, emotional, nutritional, and other health concerns that have come up since schools closed. Basically, it's more dangerous for them to stay home than it is to go to school. One senator cited data in other countries and from child groups like the YMCA that show minimal COVID cases in kids, no surge in cases where schools reopened, and little to no evidence of kids passing the virus to adults. Fauci stressed schools plans need to follow CDC guidance on reopening and consider where their community is with the virus. Fauci said pool testing could also be a good strategy for schools. That's where you test more than one sample at a time, which frees up resources. In terms of surging cases, Dr. Fauci suggested some states may be skipping over checkpoints offered in reopening guidance. And he also said what they're seeing in terms of pictures of the public also puts the increase in numbers back on personal responsibility.
Or open up in a way where you see people at bars not wearing masks, not avoiding crowds, not paying attention to physical distancing. I think we need to emphasize the responsibility that we have both as individuals and as part of a societal effort to end the epidemic.
In terms of following social distancing guidance, it was brought up multiple times today that American Airlines is booking flights to capacity. The CDC director called it disappointing. He also said the agency firmly supported no-cost virus testing for all Americans. Back to the lineup. Billions of dollars are left over as the lending period ends for the government program to help small businesses. We're looking into why and what comes next for these businesses that are still struggling.
Keller and Keller.
The roundabout capital of the United States is getting set to add more. Carmel has more than 125 roundabouts, more than any other city in the U.S., and work will begin on 2 new ones in a few weeks. Construction is set to begin on or after July 15th on new roundabouts at 116th Street and College Avenue and 116th Street and Guilford Road. Work on both will be done at the same time and will require lane restrictions, but not full closures. Construction costs will be about $3.4 million, with about 80% of that coming from federal funding. These are 2 of the 11 roundabouts Carmel plans to add through next year. And work is already complete or just about done on the first 2 on the list. Carmel Drive in Pennsylvania just opened, and the roundabout at 96 and Haverstick will be primarily done and likely open next week. The city says it will continue to build roundabouts due to their proven track record of reducing accidents and saving lives.
It's the last day for small businesses to apply for a loan through the Paycheck Protection Program. 4.8 million businesses received a PPP loan with a total of $519 billion lent out. But today there is still more than $130 billion left in the pot. As to why that is, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council says there's a few reasons, like concerns over how much would actually be given, constantly changing rules, and strict limits to how the money can be used.
Not all businesses are the same. So, you've got businesses with high overhead, maybe few on payroll. This program really didn't align with their needs.
The owners of a Colorado brewery who got a PPP loan say it helped, but that it only goes so far.
It didn't solve the problems. What it did was sustain us for a few more months.
The SBE Council is working with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle for further policy solutions. It's pushing to broaden what expenses can be forgiven, especially when it comes to technology. Though through a survey, the group found 87% of small businesses said they wouldn't have been able to survive without cloud-based services.
We know that consumers are on social media and technology platforms looking for new businesses, looking for new brands, looking for new things that they need. And that's where small businesses can really fill that gap.
The Small Business Administration says it will be up to Congress to decide what to do with leftover funds from the PPP. College admission deans are trying to put students at ease who are worried about the pandemic impacting their applications. They say they'll understand if things students typically do to beef up their applications won't happen. That includes extracurricular activities and public service. Harvard University's Graduate School of Education released a statement on admissions with hundreds of deans across the country endorsing it. Back to the lineup, workers who hadn't planned to retire are now being forced to think about this life change, the steps to take now to make sure you're still in a good place with your money.
Working for you.
Older workers being forced into unplanned early retirements with COVID-19 is forcing countless companies to downsize. Chris Conti takes a look at what older workers need to be successful in this situation.
As Americans slowly return to work, there are some who are finding the current economic situation much gloomier than others.
They're obviously tough times. I mean, they're tough times for everybody.
That's Susan Weinstock with AARP. We sat down with her to get a better perspective of what the COVID pandemic has done to older workers, as tens of millions of jobs have disappeared.
Are these jobs going to come back? Are older workers going to be the people that are brought back last because of CDC guidance?
Many large companies, including the airlines, are offering early retirement packages. Susan's concern, older workers are being forced out of work without enough saved for retirement. And then there's this. Half of full-time workers experience job loss after the age of 50. It typically takes them double the time to get back into the workforce as it does a younger worker. Even if they find a job, they end up making less money. And there's less time to make up retirement savings that were lost.
We know that saving through work is the best way to save for retirement. And when you don't have that option, it makes it a lot harder.
Her advice, if you're over the age of 50 and out of work, use this time to upskill or reskill. Find an online class, maybe in an industry that's hiring. Many of those classes are free. Showing employers that you're a lifelong learner makes you more marketable.
So we just want to make sure that older workers are able to recover from this along with everybody else in the economy.
So we're not gonna correct them during.
And if you're working from home, Susan recommends taking money you might have spent on commuting and putting it into your retirement account.
That we want to enable people to work for as long as they want or need to work.
A few ways to navigate a cloudy economy as the country works to rebound. I'm Chris Conti reporting.
More than 1,000 companies have signed AARP's employer pledge, meaning they won't hire based on age. You can find a list of all those companies and see if they're hiring on AARP's website. And there are new resources for people out of work or looking to learn new skills. LinkedIn has identified 10 in-demand jobs right now, software developer being the highest by far in-demand position. All the skills for these in-demand career fields can be learned online. LinkedIn has provided free access for anyone to training courses to prepare for those in-demand jobs.
Well, I'll take you someplace you can't go this weekend. For racing, you're inside the Motor Speedway now with our Pagoda camera. You're looking at the scoring pylon, and drivers won't see fans. They'll see the stars and stripes on the stands headed into Turn 1 on what should be a dry weekend for the Grand Prix Saturday and the Brickyard on Sunday. Hamilton County about ready to get covered up with heavy rainfall coming out of Madison, Tipton County. These are coming from northeast to southwest. Western portions of Park County with a down downpour too. We've been following this area for a little bit, and I'll remove the lightning so you can see what's under it. There's Tipton, then to Lapel. Anderson just cleared of the heavy rain. This will move toward Fortville, Geist, Fishers, Cicero, obviously, Noblesville, Carmel. We look into this. We've got our flood warning here where up to 2 inches of rain has fallen in some spots. These are radar estimates from the intensity of the radar, then a return to the radar, then we get estimates of rainfall. And remember, this will lag a little bit because it takes a while to register, but anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain already registering and still pouring. To the northwest we go, right through Delphi. This will cut into Lafayette and Tippecanoe County, especially northeast of Lafayette. 77 rain-cooled degrees in Muncie. Temperatures in the 80s elsewhere. Across the metro area, temperatures close to the mid-80s. But remember, the thunderstorms will cool you off quickly. In Hamilton County, you'll likely see some street flooding as well. We'll repeat again tomorrow. 40% chance of additional thunderstorms with a high of 87.
For Elizabeth Eckford, racism has played a part in her life for 70 years, but never more than when she walked up the steps of Central High School for the first time in 1957. I met up with the member of the Little Rock Nine to talk about what's happening now compared to her experience growing up. For decades, Elizabeth Eckford has walked the grounds of Central High School in the shadows.
Hi, what are you planning?
Hi. Playing some lantana.
She'll occasionally talk with strangers, but she's always remained modest.
Thank you for bringing your talent here.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoy it.
Modest of her role in its history.
Who are you?
I'm a local person.
Oh, okay.
I live here.
You been to school here too?
Way back.
Way back when?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Lots of memories, huh? A lot of things changed.
Lots of things have changed.
Yeah.
To some, Elizabeth's name may not be familiar, but to many, the lasting image of her on Central's first day of desegregation in 1957 is.
I had felt so terribly alone. At one point, they said, get a rope. You know, I was walking, let's lynch her. There was a pack of reporters and photographers in front of me walking backwards and asking me questions. I didn't say anything because I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I would cry in public.
It was a fear that consumed Elizabeth for 50 years as she silently battled the demons of PTSD.
Talking about the past is a walk through pain. It was very difficult.
The school, that picture, they would elicit panic attacks, anxiety, flashbacks, fears that only began to dissolve.
They were very patient with me.
Once Elizabeth started sharing her story with students who let her know she wasn't in this alone.
And I had to come and tell you, say thank you again and again and again. When I would cry, they waited and gave me a chance to resume. It meant that to them I was a human being. Okay.
These days, Elizabeth walks here as a different woman. Any sort of emotions or feelings?
No. Over years, there's no fear left, even in crowded hallways.
One who remains modest in her triumph and dedicated in her pursuit to help others.
I do point out that they can just reach out to support someone who's being harassed. Just treat that person in a way that you want to be treated. That can be very powerful. It was very powerful for me when it happened.
Checking the newsfeed, more companies are joining the Facebook advertising boycott. Chobani and Pfizer are just two of the latest. It's part of the Stop Hate for Profit campaign aimed at preventing hate speech and misinformation on social media. And the wait for summer blockbusters just got a little bit longer. AMC and Cinemark are both pushing back reopening until the end of July. This comes after studios further delayed the release of Tenet and Mulan. Traditional clothing fitting rooms went away with the pandemic. Now virtual is taking over. A 3D body scan company is teaming up with Brookfield Malls to roll out the technology in some places this fall. FitMatch says it scans the body in under a minute and can tell you what size you are for different retailers. And a final check on our lineup. Your credit score may not be the only thing lenders now take into account. The new index they could be looking at and how to improve your chances of getting approved.
To Keller. Keller and Keller.
Lenders could be looking at a new tool in addition to your credit score that could help you out during these uncertain financial times. FICO has a new thing called a resilience index that lenders are getting access to immediately. The biggest factor with your traditional FICO credit score is if you pay your bills on time. This new index will supplement that score and try to predict how likely it is that you'll fall behind financially.
I think that it's going to be most relevant on the borderlines. So if you're on the border of being approved or not approved, or you're on the border of fair credit and good credit, or good credit and excellent credit. These are all times when this new resilience index is going to be a tiebreaker of sorts.
The index looks at how many accounts you have. If you've applied for a bunch of cards recently, that may reflect poorly in your index. It also looks at the length of your account history and your credit utilization ratio. That's the credit you are using divided by the credit available to you. Industry analyst Ted Rossman says working on that is the biggest thing you can do to quickly help your score.
So if you make $4,000 of charges during the month and you have a $5,000 limit, you're using 80% of your available credit, which is high. So the fix there is to make an extra payment before that statement even generates. And you can knock that ratio down before it even comes out.
Rossman says this is important because you can have a high utilization ratio even if you pay your bills in full. And there are severe racial disparities showing up for student loan borrowers. Borrowers in majority Black and Latinx neighborhoods are up to 5 times more likely to fall behind on their loans than borrowers in more white areas. This is according to a new analysis from the nonprofit Student Borrower Protection Center. It looked at data from D.C., Philadelphia, San Francisco, and New York City. It found in the New York City neighborhoods with the highest rate of student loans entering collections, all but one are majority minority neighborhoods. As the number of COVID hotspots continues to grow, tomorrow we're taking a look at the likelihood of a second big lockdown. What experts say we can watch for to see if a lockdown will be needed.
Thunderstorms are again the big story at this hour. These are the colors of flood warnings out in Tipton, Hamilton, and Madison counties. We'll go on a radar tour here in just a second. That's all for the news at 5:30. The news at 6 starts right now.
This